Yep.
And we can see you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can start.
How's everybody doing?
Hanging in there.
Good.
Good. All right.
All right, you're good to start, Nora.
Okay. The only thing I could not find in all the emails I had was the agenda.
Oh, we can put it up on the screen if that's easier.
All right. Just, I got the Chestnut Street. I have the memo. I have the proposed construction easement. The only thing I found the minutes. Oh, wait, you know what? I think Brian went into, oh, here it is.
I can pull it
Sorry.
up if you want.
Into spam. All right.
Steve, if Nora's got them, could we,
Yeah, I have them. I have them in front of me. Sorry.
Okay, I have it up on the screen and hopefully you guys can see it.
it's just that we can't see everybody and you don't necessarily know who's talking, but,
Over
Yeah.
to you, Steve.
Yeah, you could, there's a way you can see the agenda plus also see the thumbnails from some of the
Yep.
some of the folks.
it's just the sizing. It's okay. I'll deal with it.
Yeah, and I can get rid of this too, because if you see, I mean, there's only a couple of items, so it's easy to move through it fairly quickly.
All right. So we want to call to order. Who's going to do the roll call?
I can do that, and I'm going to do it off memory at the moment. So Ms. King,
Here.
Ms. Peniston,
Here,
Mr. Baxendale,
Yeah.
Mr. Mushak,
Here.
and Ms. Langalis.
Here.
And if Steve Ferguson happens to pop in, just let me know and we can add him for the record.
He was coming, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Just for the record, I just wanted to tell everybody I talked to Fran last night on the phone and she sounded tired, but she sounded in good spirits, like on her way to recovery. So that was good news. It was very good to hear her voice last night.
Good. Thank you.
Good. All right, so we're going to start with the special appropriation for the Board of Education for the special capital appropriation of $1,642,470 to complete the e-tablet computers for students and teachers in grades K through 8. And we're going to hear the report and the recommendation. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Do you want me to start, Steve, or I'm not sure your normal process, if you introduced it or you want us to just jump right in? I'm happy to jump right in.
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the members of the Planning Commission for having us tonight. I believe at this meeting, we have, it looks like I saw Barbara Meyer Mitchell, who is the chair of our Finance Committee, and I'll ask if she has a few introductory words in a moment. I'll introduce the issue. We also have Ralph Valancisi, who is our Chief of Technology and Partnerships, and he certainly will be able to speak at great depth in terms of the district's technology initiatives and what this is all about. So obviously, as you're aware, everyone's world has been, completely upended as a result of this pandemic, and certainly the school system has been, extremely challenged in terms of providing ongoing education to our children in what is now really, I think we're 6 or 7 weeks at least into this. And it's, obviously a major challenge and one that relies very much on technology to do it effectively and efficiently. The district had been moving over the last several years to what we refer to as a one-on-one or one-to-one environment where we have one technology device for one student, but we were nowhere near there at the point that this pandemic hit. It quickly became clear that we needed additional devices, and Ralph can talk more about how we secured funding for a number of those devices at a number of grade levels. But the appropriation that is before you really is to the last piece of this in order to bring the district to a full one-to-one environment. So the appropriation will fund at the youngest grade levels Dell lap units that are tablets plus have a keyboard that those students need. And at the upper grades, we've rolled out Chromebooks. The appropriation consists of, I guess, about 4 or 5 separate elements. It includes, at this point, the appropriation includes 2,000 Chromebooks, which have been rolled out at this point, and 2,700 student Dell tablets with keyboards, and then another 300 Dell laptops and tablets for teachers are also part of this request. So the district, in order to both get through the final few weeks of the school year, needs the appropriation now. We also need it for summer school. We, still are not certain what summer school will bring in terms of how much of summer school will be distance learning based and how much of it will be building based. So that's something that we're still waiting for further guidance from the state on. We do expect going into next school year, we are going to need to rely very heavily on this technology because we're expecting, certainly in looking at what's happened in other countries that are ahead of us in this pandemic, there are a number of changes that we're likely going to need to implement to the way that we provide schooling for our children. So we may need to put fewer children in any classroom at any given time. That certainly has been one of the items that's been discussed, which might suggest, for instance, that we may need some kind of model that has part of our instruction being delivered in classroom, in school buildings, and part of it delivered remotely. We also, have certainly taken to heart the guidance from health experts that there is a likelihood of an additional second wave, if you will, or additional waves of this pandemic until a vaccine is available and is widely administered and delivered. That we certainly need to be prepared that next school year is not going to look like our typical school year. So for all of these reasons, moving to the one-to-one environment where we have enough devices for all of our children, as all of our suburban neighbors already had, by the way, we think this is really, really critical. So I'd like to, I did see the chair of our finance committee, Barbara Meyer Mitchell. I'd like to give her an opportunity to offer any comments she may have, or if she wants to sort of sum up at the end, that's fine. And then ask Ralph to kind of fill in and answer questions.
I wouldn't mind having a moment just to address the rationale behind this specific request in terms of curriculum delivery. As Tom touched on, we are looking at multiple different possible models that will be informed by the research that comes in from all around the world as to what will be safest for our students and our staff. But one of the challenges, when we pivoted so quickly to distance learning, the K2 reliance on packets was very challenging because it's costly to produce them. It's difficult to get them out in a timely manner. We had mailing difficulties, and they're inflexible to differentiation to the needs of a student. So these devices, and also there are devices for some of our special education students who have specific needs. These are to be able to differentiate and meet students where they are in their learning process and not do a one-size-fits-all approach to education, which is never the way to go. So we appreciate your consideration of this request. The Board of Education is proud of the way that we pivoted quickly to an entirely new model and the phased approach with a STEM approach, a design mindset of improving every 2 weeks on the model. And now we have the opportunity over the summer to plan for what the fall may hold. And this is a critical tool for our staff to be able to be flexible in our response.
I have a couple questions. I am one of the parents that have the second grader that learned off of these packets. And I have to tell you, in the top 10 experiences of my life, the packet education has been one of the worst experiences I've had in my life.
You're very lucky.
It really has been, pretty much my daughter has learned nothing the last 4 months. So everything has been offline or other sources or whatever. It's not even just the fact that there weren't tablets, but it was also there is no curriculum. So I think I've been pushing for I'm shocked that we didn't get tablets right from the beginning, to be honest with you. So tablets, Google Chromebooks, whatever it is you want to call them. But, I talked to Dr. Adamowski, and you can't be asking these teachers to be going out and making videos and doing this and pulling it together and using Google Classroom. Google Classroom doesn't work any better for second graders either. Like, you have to have some sort of software and some sort of curriculum. And I don't know where that all fits into the equation, but that's going to be another revenue source. And can we kind of like maybe coordinate that so we're not doing it at the last minute and after the fact as well? Dr. Adamowski mentioned some software to me, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it's actually like curriculum based. Tom, has that been factored into an upcoming budget? What is going on with all of that?
Yeah, I think Ralph probably is best
I
to
can probably
answer
talk
this.
to
And
some of
I
these-
know that Brenda Myers has also worked on this, but Ralph, you probably are, of everyone here on the call, you have probably the best information perhaps.
Sure, no, definitely. And yeah, like I said, well, let me kind of backtrack a little bit because first of all, I probably shouldn't talk too much about the overall project because I think, Barbara and Tom, I was really impressed with how detailed you got into and really understanding where we're going with our distance learning initiative. So you did a wonderful job of explaining it. Just a couple of things around the K2 piece, because that really is the biggest change that we're seeing right now, and obviously where the biggest amount of funding is needed. We realized that, as we started moving forward, that there was a rationale, just so you know, on what device we also picked. So we picked a tablet device that has a keyboard. The purpose for that is that we know that at the K2 level, students want to be able to, they need to be able to work off of the tablet at times, but knowing that we're going into the situation that we are, it's not just the student, it's the parents working with the students at that age level that's so critical. So making sure there was a keyboard that they could work with as well was really essential, that we made sure that we made a device that would work for, integrating how the student could work at home as well as in the school. So like I said, there was a lot of thought put behind that.
But Ralph, moving forward, I want to make sure whatever we're investing in, we're doing well. Parents are going to be going back to work, and parents are not going to be able to sit there through their K through second-year-old and deliver distance learning because they're going to have to be paying for the mortgage. They're going to have to be putting their lights on, paying for the car payment, putting food on the table. So whatever equipment we're spending 1.6, it's like all this other stuff has to tie in and go with it, because you can't just throw the Chromebook at them and not have the content, the instruction. And if people are thinking it's going to be the parents sitting next to them, that's not going to work.
We want to make sure, Nora, I think what we want to make sure, I'm not expecting that the parents sitting next to them at all times.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that there's actually a device that can work that way. So that as a parent's working with their child on anything, whether they're reading a book, that they have the ability to have that accessibility. So we just knew that we wanted to pick a device that was flexible. With that, though, there are pieces of curriculum that we are also implementing. You've mentioned our learning management system, which is Google Classroom, where information's posted and it's really used as a communications and a collaboration tool with students. We use video conferencing. That's Google Meet is the one that we're really moving forward with. as much as possible. There's also video content and curriculum that we receive from a variety of different providers. We're also using a delivery mechanism called Nearpod, where there's actually lessons that are developed and are interactive that can be included with formative assessments can be included within there. I have a feeling though that Dr. Adamowski was probably mentioning a tool called Seesaw or Flipgrid.
Seesaw, it was Seesaw.
So both Seesaw and Flipgrid they're both equivalent. We use both of them. What they do is they allow the student to be able to, at home, teacher be able to record a video, be able to send it to all the students and allow the students to be able to do some kind of performance-based assessment. So they can either show their work or they could do something else and record a small video showing what they've actually learned back. So it's another one of those communication devices to be able to kind of integrate within the classroom and then be able to categorize what you're learning. So hopefully that kind of explains a little bit what Seesaw is.
So is the money been budgeted for all of that stuff, or are we just buying these computers, and what's going on those computers when they're delivered?
No, we're actually expanding the curriculum, the online curriculum opportunities that we have within the students. So some of them we actually already own, and we're just enhancing them and actually blowing them out to be able to be full-fledged, to be able to be used in both instances. In other cases, things like Seesaw and things like Flipgrid, others, we are including that in our budget as well.
Okay, so I just want to understand something, because I mean, the technology is there, but so if this has to move to actually, like, you know, the poor teacher not going and having to like create the video and then post the video, and then the kid is going here and they're going there and they're going there and they're going there.
So Nora,
I mean, is there like a thought out curriculum program that's kind of going in here? Or, I mean, I saw Flipgrid. I wasn't very impressed with Flipgrid, to be honest with you. So I'm just want to understand where all that's leading.
I think it's actually the model of teaching that's going to change. So we are using online curriculum tools, okay? So, and we are including those. But part of the other big piece of this is comprehensively, we're changing the way we look at the way that we teach. So, you know, people are talking about the new normal. This is really the next normal.
Don't say that to me, Ralph. I'll have a heart attack, okay?
One of the things that we're doing encompassing that's also part of this process is a professional development plan that'll be delivered to teachers as well to also offer additional support. I can say right now that I'm launching a new website that's a digital learning website. There'll be weekly classes on there for teachers to learn about the different tools that are available when they have questions. My staff, meaning my library media specialists and others, will also be working on virtual office hours there to be able to offer additional online help. And I'm doing this in conjunction, the curriculum department, specifically Tina Henkel's doing a lot of work on our STEM coordinator on developing the curriculum tools that are going to be available there as well. So we actually will have an online place for teachers to go to be able to sign up for courses on a weekly basis and actually learn a little bit more about Google Classroom. So they may have a specific question, and if that comes up, we can actually start to offer those types of tutorials on a regular basis. Those are recorded, and then they're actually allowed for teachers to go back to. So it becomes an ongoing professional development site. And really, we're trying to make sure that teachers get the PD that they need to be able to deliver instruction in this manner. It came at us pretty quickly. You know, we've got to say though, I'm so impressed with the teachers and what they've been able to do. And if we didn't do a lot of, you know, kudos to them, because over the last 4 or 5 years, if we haven't done what we've been doing with online learning and even that small hybrid model, they wouldn't have been able to spin and be able to make this fully what they've been able to do and actually be able to implement a lot of what they've done. So, you know, they really have actually done a remarkable job. That doesn't mean that there's more work that we all have to do in this area. And I think that's what we're trying to build out for. We definitely need the infrastructure, though, to be able to deliver that type of an environment for our students and for our teachers. In order to do that, that's why we need the request that we're making right now for these machines, so that we can make sure that the infrastructure is in place. We're working on the professional development, and that'll have to just be a continual process. We are actually adding in our curriculum pieces so that, and then we're expanding the ones that we have to their fullest extent, which is really what we want to do as well.
Okay. And then one other thing. So it looked like you're buying the base model computers. I mean, I bought my daughter, or I should say Santa bought her Chromebook for Christmas, and you know, it was the base one, and it's like I kind of wish I didn't really honestly know that much about Chromebooks. I mean, I went in that direction because of school, and you know, there's a lot of like little glitches and memory things. And are we buying enough horsepower in these so that like they're not going to be obsolete in a year and a half?
No, I mean, we will be having to look at refresh models over about 4-year period of time. So it's not like they're going to last forever, but
Right.
these models, when we've moved most of our curriculum, just so you know, to more of a cloud-based model. So it's not like they're running it off the computer, which is one of the reasons why we also need to have this access. Another piece to this that's really important that we've realized through this whole process is having internet access for students. So that's another thing that we've been working on. And I know I mentioned this at the last BT meeting when we had a conversation, but it's a shameless plug for one of our partners, which has been Altice. And they have been wonderful. They've actually taken our Chromebooks, they've taken the serial numbers and the MAC addresses to each one of those, and they've been able to connect us to public Wi-Fi for free through this process. We would never have been able to implement the way we were if it wasn't for that. We would never have been able to get enough hotspots to be able to cover things. So they really had. They came to bat, and they really helped the community.
Hey, Ralph,
That being
I have a
said-
question, Ralph.
Yeah.
I have a question when you're done. When you're done, I have a question.
Okay. That being said, though, we want to make sure that, like I said, all of our tools are cloud-based. The computers that we're using will be able to access those effectively over the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Ralph,
And I
just
also just piggyback really short. What Ralph touched on is something that the curriculum team spent a lot of time thinking about, which was we needed an equitable model so that we could reach every student no matter what their resources are. And at the time that we pivoted in March, there really was no way to get an internet to all of our students, especially the K-3.
Well, I don't know. They were announcing free internet at the very beginning, Barb. So I beg to differ over that. Everyone was offering it. I mean, even Cablevision was offering free
Right.
internet. So.
The design of the model was to ensure that in those first phases, we could provide the same model no matter what your demographic was. And that's what we're trying to roll out as we become more sophisticated in our approach.
great.
Do you
This
finish-
question
After you
for
finish, I have a question too.
All right. Hey, hello, everyone. Good evening. Ralph and Barbara. Real quick, what are the other major cities doing similar to what we're looking to do now? Are we attaching ourselves to what some have tried and not worked? Or are we spearheading some new electronic initiative? Is this something that you think that we should have been ahead on, or you think we're right on time with this?
I mean, I want to say we're actually a little bit ahead of some other school systems in the way that we're actually approaching this.
Similar to our size of
We're
our
not
city?
doing, what's that?
Similar to our size city?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't think we're doing anything on the cutting edge. We're just actually filling in and doing what we need to be doing. So we're filling the gaps of where we realize that we needed them. So a lot of the technology that we're using is not cutting edge technology, as Nora mentioned. We're not buying like, $2,000 machines for each one of the students. We're buying what they need so that they can actually, complete the work that they're doing, as well as our teachers.
I saw what Wilton's doing, and I actually physically saw what New Canaan is doing, and they're doing some pretty progressive stuff. The Wilton's using that seesaw.
Yeah.
So I wanted to thank Nora for her questions about asking about curriculum, et cetera, but also Ralph, I want to congratulate you and your team for being so thoughtful. And also Barbara, I think you're absolutely right that the only way that we can do this is we've got to go across the board doing one-to-one, or it's not equitable, and that's the only right way to do it. And the experience for teachers, if they don't have or they're not able to engage all the kids, then we're not giving an equal education across the way. I think I had a couple of logistical questions. So it's just to understand, not to question the planning, because I know you all have thought about this very carefully. I did some quick math, and did I calculate correctly that there are about 7,000 computers of some or tablets being bought to cover the K through 6+? I just added up real quick and it looked like it was about 7,000 units. Does that sound about right?
That does sound about right. Yep.
Okay, and then I guess my question is, what's always a concern is, I don't think there is a choice. You've got to get the equipment out. But my two questions, or my three questions are, one, what happens if a student leaves the district or something, or what's the ability to get back equipment, and is it even worthwhile? Two, if there are problems with the equipment, how do families get support so it works? The other is really just a comment, which is based on what I'm reading about how school systems are planning, I think it would be foolish for us not to make this investment, given that it is highly likely we will have periods where kids can't go to school or there's going to be influx, and for us not to be prepared, I think is really a disservice both to the students and to the teachers. And so I also applaud you for thinking through about the teachers getting appropriately trained and supported. But I would like to understand about, are we really covering everybody we need to? And in terms of this huge investment, where are the pitfalls in terms of losing equipment or having equipment that doesn't work in the home?
Okay, great. And if I can just finish answering one thing for Steve too, in looking at our comparison, I'm going to put on a different hat for a moment. So I'm also I'm an adjunct professor at Fairfield U, and this semester I was teaching a capstone course in educational technology. So it's the final course to finish your educational technology degree. I had students from around the state that were in my class. All of them, halfway through the semester, we decided to change the capstone to focus because all of them were in positions where they were supporting their districts. And this is Fairfield, Weston, up the line in Westfield. I mean, there was about 12 students in the class. They were all supporting their districts in different ways. So we actually turned the capstone experience into how are you supporting them through the use of educational technology. And that was actually the presentation at the end of the semester. Looking at what they were doing, I mean, a lot of them were very creative and stuff, but we were, like I said, our teachers are on par, or in many cases, moving ahead of where I saw some of our counterparts. I mean, I was just actually really impressed. So they really do, but now having these tools, which is something that some of the more, I want to say affluent, but some other districts would potentially have, that caused the equity issue, was what was causing us to be able to not get to that point. It's not the quality of the teachers that we have to be able to make it happen. Now that we have it in place, we're looking at scaling out the professional development model and just increasing and just getting better at what we do. So hopefully that kind of answers where we're at. So.
Yeah, it does. We have 4 Chromebooks on our dining room table during the day. The issue we have is chargers. I have my daughter sharing the charger with my son. They go back and forth. They fight over the charger. But the question I also have is, so after the next year, is it the thought that my daughter and son had that the Chromebook stays with them each year? Because I realized that there is a balance due for each of the children.
Yeah. So
with their student number.
The new plan will be, it's like students will probably have a refresh cycle 3 times in their career in the K-12 environment. They'll get one in kindergarten, one around 5th grade, and then one in 9th grade. And so that's where you'll see that 4-year cycle going through the process of actually then, and at that point though, they'll actually need a new device after about 4 years.
I have a question. I mean, hopefully distance learning is not our future. But I mean, my daughter was given a Chromebook in the beginning of 2nd grade, which she didn't get to bring home. That was actually bumped up to one of the other grades. So she started, you were using Ruane sort of as a guinea pig to roll out some early testing, which was kind of honestly a little bit of a disaster, but it was all, I personally think K, 1st and 2nd, is very young to have these kids on electronic devices. I really don't think it's probably good for them. So when the kids go into kindergarten, I mean, how much use are those things going to get? I mean, I'm like hoping they're not going to be on those computers all the time.
No, and that was truly never the goal. I mean, to
Okay.
have, especially the younger ones on computers all the time, but they have a different way of interacting with the computers, which is why we need touchscreens for them.
Yeah.
We don't plan on having the students on the computers all the time, but they do need to be able to kind of become those digital citizens from a younger grade level. They do need to have that experience. So I wouldn't imagine any of our kids, K-12, are on a computer all the time. That is just not the way that we want to teach. And that's really, we want to be able to use it as a tool. If technology is used correctly and integrated correctly, the best way that I can kind of explain this is that if we think of the writing process, right? When students learn to write, you don't pay attention to the fact that they have a pencil and a paper in front of them. You look at the writing. So our goal is, in time with technology, that it's just so integrated and it just becomes like another thing that they use to learn. So at the younger grade levels, you probably won't see it as much, but it almost becomes invisible if it's really used correctly. So that then it just, you don't pay attention to the computer, you pay attention to the fact that the student's developing a project that they're doing on that computer with other students or doing the research that they need.
But nobody can type. Like all these kids can't type. There's no typing curriculum.
But Nora, I was going to just say, in terms of
there
the
actually is,
interaction,
though.
it isn't just curriculum or typing, it's also the interaction with the teacher if the kids can't be in the classroom.
Well,
So
that's
if
not really happening a lot. I mean, the teachers are doing video. I mean, there's very little interaction with the teachers and the students. I mean, it's getting a little bit better, but you know, at the beginning with my son, there was none. And then, you know, with my daughter, it's just not there. But the typing though, like, I mean, a lot of these kids can't type. Like I listen to the kids in the classroom with my son and like, they don't know how to type. So like,
Yeah.
are we going to be teaching any of them how to type?
Last year, we adopted a digital curriculum that included typing. It's called learning.com, and it is meant to be rolling out starting this year. And of course, it has been interrupted, but actually typing is part of the curriculum and has been for a year.
Yeah, and we actually have rolled out, Barbara, at the next curriculum committee, I'll be showing you guys some data of how far we've gotten with actually the adaptive typing piece as well.
Great.
Then I want to talk to you offline about that. Is that something the kids could do over the summer so they can learn how to type?
I think that we need to touch base with Ralph, but probably so. Yeah, I think it's available on their Chromebooks at any time.
Ralph,
Oh.
I didn't get my questions answered about the infrastructure, but I just also want to say the interaction with the computer, we should not think of it as just typing or even formal curriculum. There will be times when you cannot have interactions other than through technology. And if we're not prepared to deal with times when teachers and students can't be together, I think we're being foolish by not creating the tools to do that. I think a lot of the students are highly dependent on these interactions. I do not think that we should minimize them. I also think that it creates relationships with the families. So I think that while we're asking a lot of good questions, I think it goes beyond the traditional ways that we think about education. But we're making a big investment, and I want to know what are the contingency plans about loss, damage, and support.
Yeah. So with let me kind of backtrack then for that a little bit. So loss, damage, and support, Mary. When we're support, like I said, with these machines, we've actually got security measures put in place. You know, we can shut them down. If the machine, we do have a lot of older, like I said, the older Chromebooks are things that we're not as concerned about, but all these new devices, we plan to make sure that there's actually a 4-year life cycle for them. They're being purchased with a warranty that's actually going to cover that time frame. So for anything that is we actually have a 4-year warranty along with these with the Dell devices that we're receiving. We have our regular staff that normally works on this. As we've moved to this new model though, Mary, we've actually developed what we call a tech depot because the buildings have been closed. And we know that we would have to have that type of a model moving forward where parents can go to. It's currently located and it runs a couple of days a week at the old Briggs building, where if there's a problem that a parent has with the machine, we have a process where they just contact the teacher and the principal. There's a ticket that's given to them so that they can come down and get a replacement. And right now we're doing them just as replacements because we don't want to touch the machines that are kind of coming back in, just for the safety of the staff as well. So we're actually swapping them out. And then once they sit there for a period of time, we go back, cleanse them, and then see what the issue is. So we do have a process to be able to make sure that we're supporting the home version of this. And it's a depot model where parents can come to, but we do have it right now scheduled just to make sure that we keep people safe.
So I guess what I'm also trying to get a sense is of how did you arrive at the number of approximately 7,000? And does there build a cushion in there for loss, damage, or whatever that you can replace it? And what do you do when a student leaves the district or something like that? I just, it's a fairly big investment, and I just was wondering how you all had thought about those pieces.
Yeah, so we do have a small amount of a contingency in there. It's not a large one, but I would say, you know, for those 2,700 machines, we are going to be implementing probably 2,600 right now is the estimate, I think. So we have a couple of extra machines. No, actually a little more than that. I take that back. It's less than 100 that we'll actually have, but we will have a few spares, knowing that we would need spares while we send out the ones back to Dell if they were needed. But it is a small amount. We're trying to be as, you know, fiscally trying to make sure we're not spending any more than we need to. We would handle basically, we've actually been doing a one-to-one program at the high schools with Chromebooks. We started it a few years ago. So we've developed a way of knowing that if a student's leaving, you know, we make sure that we get the devices back. If we're closed down for a long extended period of time, yeah, to be honest, there may be a problem, like if someone just decided to leave town and we didn't know. But that machine we could brick them, well, it's called brick the machine. We can stop it from working. There's other things that would happen in order to be able to know that, you know, it wouldn't be of use to anybody leaving. But just like anything else, I mean, I think we've covered it as much as we can to make sure that we actually have a process in place. But we haven't, our experience has been at the high school level, there hasn't been a lot of damage either. So as soon as we assigned a Chromebook to a student, we found out that the damage decreased quite a bit because they knew it was theirs to be able to deal with. And secondly,
sorry.
Yeah. Secondly, we also found out that as they were leaving, we knew that just like collecting a textbook or collecting anything else, we wanted to make sure we kind of picked up that device.
And then I just want to follow up on a question that Nora raised, which is, I know this is the major capital investment, but is there anything related to this plan that we should expect to see any other requests for capital budget? Because if doing software or anything like that, are there any other expenses that we'll see down the pike that will come through a capital budget rather than an operating budget?
Yeah, so capital would not be able to cover software, would have to be an operating budget line item.
Okay.
So the support
Question real quick. How about the chargers? And I say that because I have three listeners on, 3 of the kids are listening like, hey, how about the chargers? So as far as hardware stuff, is it like, do you go pick something up? Because we've been buying them on our own. Is that will be a common expense, you think? Have you guys accounted for that, or is that just?
So it may be in time. I mean, ideally, what we do, Steve, is we actually have extra chargers at school when the kids are using the one-to-one program so that they can plug in if they forgot to charge it at night. But we would expect the students to be able to hold on to their own chargers and stuff. For the most part, though, we're not losing them. It's just a question. You may need a couple of extras at times because of the amount of computers that you have.
I see. Well, that answers the question.
Doesn't every laptop or Chromebook or whatever come with
charger? Yes.
Own charger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ralph.
We do have some spares. I shouldn't say that. I mean, it's like we do keep some spares, but not a tremendous amount of them. In school, the model we've used up to now, though, we do have extra chargers throughout the building so that they can actually charge their machine if they did forget to charge it.
I have two questions to kind of tag on to what Mary was saying. The first one is, you know, we've been doing all that food delivery to the students. So my kids and I do Mondays, and when we deliver the food, we've had a lot of shifts because the people are gone. Like they've just left. They've moved out of their house. They've, so if they have those laptops, if they just decide to leave, just by putting a brick or canceling it, it's not going to necessarily get them back.
Yeah, no, understood, definitely. But as students have been moving around, our transiency, we see the transiency within the district too. So, it's something that we track within PowerSchool when people are moving from place to place as well. So
you don't think some of them are saying they're just gone? They just left, disappeared.
Yeah. It's like I said, we haven't seen that from the standpoint of losing equipment. In the past, the experience I can tell you is from in the past when we've actually done one-to-ones and we've sent equipment home, and it's not like the transiency wouldn't be there then as well. We haven't been experiencing those issues. So will we have them every once in a while? Yeah, there will. But I think I don't think it's going to be something that we're thinking that's going to happen on a daily or on a large scale. It's going to be just like, it'll probably be about the same as we've found out that it's about the same as when you have a broken machine,
Okay.
So
to piggyback Nora's comment, which is a really good question, is there a way that we could track the timers on these computers to see if they're really being used? Is that a capability, or am I going too much in the weeds? Because if it's not being used, after a while, can we have them bring it back and have someone else use it? Or is there a way to track the usage of these devices, or that's something that the teacher would do?
Well, so I think that kind of digs into an area that, so the answer is yes, I can actually track when they're on certain applications, okay, on any of these machines. And we actually use that data to figure out whether or not it makes sense to continually buy the new software. So it's like, if we're seeing that we've paid for a piece of software that's not being used, why are we spending the money on that? We really need to revisit. Does it make sense with our curriculum and so forth? So we can look at that. But the question that we're really, we're looking at right now is, we're going to be using these tools while they're in school as well as when they're home potentially. So when they're in school on a regular basis, some teachers are going to use the devices much more than others because of just their curriculum and how they work. When they're home, yeah, we can already tell you that's like, if you look at my Google Classroom data, it's like it's through the roof since March because everybody's home on it all the time. Whereas in the past, a teacher would use Google Classroom, but they'd only use it for a very small portion of time because they'd still be face-to-face with the student as well. So we can track that data to look at it, but I don't know if that's necessarily the data to say that just because they're not using it at that time, it makes sense that they're not benefiting from it for what's being needed. Does
Understood.
That make sense? Yeah.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Nora, whenever discussion's finished, I'm willing to move the issue forward.
Just one more quick question. So the tech support thing, like you said, your office was handling it. We have our own, and we had some issues like with Zoom, with the teacher stuff. And, one of the frustrating things was that if I got an email from the teacher, I couldn't forward it to Addison because she's in second grade and the email wouldn't forward. And then the teacher was playing the tech support person and we didn't have anybody to call. And so who's going to be providing all that kind of tech support for all this equipment?
So imagine, and I should say, it looks a little different when you're home if we're in a situation where we're home. So let's just say we get closed down again next year in October. The way that support will look, and when I say the tech support that I was talking about at Briggs, that's actually the tech support for the hardware to make sure everything's working. What we're also putting into place on that website that I mentioned are those online office hours. So for our specialists that really work, like our library media specialists and our digital literacy teachers, they're the ones that will be able to help support the teachers, the students, and that's where a teacher would go into, because we do realize that there's some of those gaps where you're talking about a software support issue. not necessarily a hardware support issue.
Right,
So
okay.
we're building that up, and we've actually developed a new site where those first office online hours will be starting next week. So we
Okay.
actually have a number of them. It's not all day. It's like, you know, an hour a day where a teacher can call in, and it's similar to a Zoom meeting. We're doing it using Microsoft Teams. They can log on, and then they can actually talk to somebody to try and help them develop, you know, come up with an answer. And if they don't come up with that answer, then we would actually pass it on to the next person, and it would be the first level 1 support. But it's our teachers doing that support now. Like, so
Okay, that's asking a lot. I mean, I
It
don't
is a
really
lot,
think
yeah.
teachers should be the tech support, but I mean, that's a lot of new computers at a big number that we're putting forward, and probably the younger they are, the more help they're gonna need, so.
But if the teachers don't understand the software that's being used, you know, and these are, once again, these are our teachers that are actually focused around integrating technology, that are the ones that are helping with
But
that.
you know, we only have teachers for so many hours based on the union. You want them teaching, you don't want them being tech support, right?
Oh yeah, this isn't during this regular school day.
Okay,
So we also have the other piece of our model that we're changing is we have what are called tech coaches. These are
Okay.
teachers that receive a stipend to be able to help support certain initiatives. So it may be Google Classroom, it may be ClassLink, whatever it may be. Part of the model going into next year is that they offer 1 hour of tech support for their own building next year. So that's, like I said, we're trying to build it in that our staff is developing that capacity over time, which is really what we should be doing.
all right. And the last question is, this is enough? You don't need any more than this? Is this gonna be enough?
This is enough to get the plan moving forward. I mean, once again, we're going to be looking at a much more comprehensive plan over the next 2 to 3 years, because as I mentioned, there's a life cycle, and you've got a chance at, like, every 4 years, you're going to have to really look at some replacements. So there will have to be a sustainability model that's going to be put into place. What that looks like right now, we'll be able to kind of help build out at, you know, over the next year, so that then we can, you know, approach the city and the Board of Ed to be able to, you know, approve the model that would actually make the most sense.
Was that number cut out of your budget this year? After, I know we didn't cut it out of your budget, but did it get cut out of your budget when it left the Planning Commission?
Yeah, yes, it's not in my budget anymore, but we're actually, you're filling the gap at the moment. Once again, what that number is going to have to look like in 21, 22, those are the kinds of things that we're going to really need to look at, how that model is going to look moving forward. Knowing that, we have to sustain.
It just concerns me, because if we're making all this investment in the technology every year, the city is going to have to know that they're going to have to, this is a continuous thing. You shouldn't have to beg for it every year.
Yeah, I did want to, I wanted to make that point as well, that, you know, although I think this sets us up in a pretty decent spot for this year, certainly, as Ralph indicated, there will be a need to refresh these units. You know, they're not going to last 15 or 20 years. It is going to be something that will need to be refreshed in the future. So
I just know every 4 years, it's been this thing on the Planning Commission, and every 4 years, we've always supported it, and then it somehow goes somewhere else, and the refresh never happens, so.
So Nora, I would just suggest that one of the things to help with that is it would be great maybe in the fall to have some kind of report back about the impact this investment is having on teaching and how many students are actually reaching.
Yeah.
Particularly if we have another incident of people having to be at home. So if
Mary,
you're
who would
ready,
be the
Nora,
person
I'd
to
love.
report that, Mary? Who would be the
Say
person
again?
to report that? Who would be the person to report that? Somebody on the curriculum side of it?
I would love
That's
to
more of an
jump
operating
in
thing.
on that. I had a great conversation with our new superintendent who'll be starting July 1st, Dr. Alexandra Estrella. And she and I discussed end of year reporting structures already for this year and going forward in the future. We have a good idea of how to be as transparent as possible and going beyond just reporting that to the mayor, but the council and the BET and the Planning Commission, so that everybody knows and can celebrate the advancements that we've made in education in our city.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yep.
So is everybody okay? Does anybody have any questions? Do we want to?
I'd like to move the resolution.
Okay,
I'd like to second it.
all right. So wait, where is that resolution?
So, right.
See, I think if you scroll down, it should be there.
At the end of the agenda?
It should be under the, it should be after the mayor and the Henry's letter.
Oh, at
Leave
the
it.
end of
Right at
Henry's
the bottom
memo?
of
Okay, hold on.
You won't use
Resolution
it.
is-
Okay,
says
here, I have it, I see it. So the resolution is to, who's gonna second to move, or do you want me to read it first? Steve?
I've got it in front of me. I've seconded it.
Okay. Resolution is to approve the special capital appropriations totaling 1,642,470 to increase the available funds in Board of Education capital project number 09-205-010-CO112 instructional.
Nora, I think you're reading the wrong resolution. On the screen, you should see.
Wrong one.
You should see the
It should be on the
planning
screen, Nora. Scroll over. Be it resolved.
I don't see it.
It's the
Would you
one
like me to
Brian
read
said.
it?
Where's the resolution that I'm looking at what Brian sent me. That's the only one I see.
Yeah, that was the memo from Henry, I think. And then underneath that, there should be the planning commission's resolution.
I can read it if you like, if it expedites the matter.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Be it resolved by the Norwalk Planning Commission that the special capital appropriation request made by the city's Board of Education for the funding of $1.642 million, $1.642,470 to provide e-tablet computers for students and teachers in grades K through 8 be approved subject to the following reasons. 1, to implement the plan of conservation and development goal to make Norwalk's public school system the most successful city school system in Connecticut, with students exceeding state average achievement and high need students having the smallest achievement gap. Number 2, to implement the plan of conservation and development policy to continue to support the NPS strategic plan to improve system performance. Be it resolved, the notice of this action be forwarded to the Common Council.
So we changed it from K through 3 to K through 8.
Correct.
Okay. You want to take a vote?
But the dollar amount was increased also. We gave the schools 400,000 earlier in the year, and that was for 5 through 8. And then they came back and asked for 1.2 million more for K through 3. That's how we got 1.6 million for K through 8.
Okay. But every K through 3 is going to have a computer with this. All right. So somebody want to,
I move the resolution, Mary.
And I seconded it.
okay. Steve?
Probably should do a roll call vote, I think, at this point.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let me take off the screen share 1 second.
Thank you.
That way I know who's on. Okay, I'm going to go by the names I'm just listing in no particular order. Mr. Baxendale?
Yes.
So this, yes, just to clarify, in favor of the motion. Ms.
Sorry, in
Peniston?
favor of the motion.
Yep. Ms. Peniston?
In favor of the motion.
Mr. Ferguson?
In favor?
Mr. Mushak?
Yes.
Ms.
In
King?
favor.
Yeah, yes, in favor.
Ms. Langallis?
Yes.
And I think I got everybody, correct?
Yep.
Okay, carries unanimously.
Thank you, Ralph. I
No problem, Duffy.
appreciate
Good night.
everything you've done.
Thank you,
Very
Barbara.
much, guys. Have a
Thanks.
good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Stay safe. I'm going to jump off. So.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you, everybody. We
Thanks, Rob.
really do appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Steve, I like the beard.
First time for everything.
I know, I like the beard too.
It's my wife's idea.
Both of you guys.
It's my wife's idea.
All right, so now we're going to move to the discussion of other items. We are going to have an update on the Norwalk
Hold
River
on,
Valley
Nora,
Trail.
no, I think you're looking at an old one. We had to add the 824 for Monroe Street.
Okay,
That
wait.
was that got sent out today. I'll pop that back up on my
No,
screen.
I don't want, I have all my emails here. So when did you send that one over, Brian?
I'd have to look. Let me see.
Okay, I thought I had everything that you sent up, but
It was probably on Monday. yesterday. I could resend it if you want.
No, I have,
Yeah, so there was a revised agenda that went out to add that item. We did that yesterday, sometime during the day. I don't remember exactly what time. That was the one that Fran responded to in her email.
right. Okay, so let's see, we're moving. Just give me a minute here, guys.
First and foremost, are we having a discussion or are we making a decision as well for this 824?
I'm looking at the one you sent me today and I'm seeing the same 512 agenda.
If you can see the screen I have up there now, I have the item on the screen. And it's a discussion and or decision. It's listed as 8-24 referral temporary right of entry and access agreement over 30 Monroe Street.
I see that, but I'm looking for the agenda because you said you changed the agenda. Where's the change in the agenda?
It's up on the screen.
I was reading.
For some reason, I can't move the screen. I'm not.
Reduce.
You can't move screen.
I have all my emails here from you. Did you send me the agenda or did Brian send me the agenda?
I believe Brian did.
Okay, so I have everything here that Brian sent me. I have the referral, which is up on my screen, but I don't have the revised agenda. All right, just, I don't see it. So if you want to email it to me, I have my screen open right now, but I don't have
Nora,
the revised agenda.
Nora, just look at the big screen because Steve has it up on the big screen.
I can't see it.
Well, then
Go to gallery.
Right
yeah.
corner of Zoom and you'll be able to see it. Like there's a little icon there.
I'm telling you, the little icon is not there. I can't see it.
Put your
Maybe
arrow
try
up there.
swipe right or something. Swipe left, swipe right. I don't know.
Must be row 8.
No, I can see it.
Did Brian say must be row waiting? I like that one,
So-
Brian.
Must be
Brian,
Nora.
Can I make a suggestion, Brian? Could you, if Brian has access to this, could he just email it to everybody right now and anybody that can't see it, open it?
Well, just
Thanks,
read
Brian.
what it says. Like,
Tammy, I hear what you're
Grab.
saying, but sometimes people have different screens when they're looking at Zoom. And the
no, I
reality,
get that, but can we just read what the
I'll read
next
it.
item on the
I'll read it.
agenda is so Nora
read
to
it.
help Nora?
I'll read it. Item 3, discussion and or decision. A 8-24 referral, temporary right of entry and access agreement over 30 Monroe Street, report and recommended action. There we go.
Thank you, Steve.
The question is, are we going to have a discussion on this or are we going to make a decision?
Hopefully you're going to do both.
All right, then let's start. Could we have someone start explaining this referral?
I believe Jessica's here.
Hey,
Hi,
Jessica.
everybody. Hey, it's Jessica Casey, Chief of Economic Community Development. It's great to see everybody. Thank you very much for hearing this review for a referral to the mayor to enter into a temporary right of entry. There was some confusion with the changing of the meeting date, so I apologize that it came through so late, but we did you as soon as possible. So this is a project that is occurring at the corner of Chestnut and Monroe over by the South Norwalk Transit Station. It actually was filed in 2018 and it got zoning approval in November 2019. What we're looking at here is a mixed use building with 110,000 square feet of development, 106 apartments with ground floor retail as well as tenant amenities. And part of what we're asking for you to review and refer is for the city to enter into a temporary right of access with the developer. And the reason for this is because they're going to be working on the foundation of the building at the corner of Chestnut and Monroe. And they will need to access some city property to be able to do some staging, but also to be able to ensure that they can pour the foundation appropriately on that site. So the temporary right of access, which is not an easement, it's not a permanent easement. A permanent easement would come after this and we would come to you in a separate request for that. This is just the temporary right of access. The term that we're looking at is a 6-month term from the effective date. It can be terminated effective upon 60 days written notice or upon 10 days advance notice from either party. So once the developer is done accessing city property for the foundation to be poured, they could write us a notice that indicates to us that they will be off of city property. The temporary right of access includes restoration clause and indemnification. It also includes insurance. We've been working with DPW, the redevelopment agency, and legal to ensure that all of the clauses are captured in that agreement. And one of the questions that did come up in the past is the city looking for compensation for the temporary right of access? And in this one particular case, we're not. We will be seeking compensation for a permanent easement, but we will not be seeking compensation because this is actually a right of entry or right of access, which is temporary in nature for 6 months. So we didn't feel it necessary to be able to do that. This project is, when it went through the zoning commission, committed to approximately $300,000 in streetscape improvements, including lighting, sidewalks, trees, bike racks. We're thinking, we have in mind that the building permit fee for this project is approximately $250,000. And we know that the permanent easement will seek compensation. The city will seek compensation for that. So again, this is just, it's not permanent easement. It is a right of entry. It's to be able to support the developer and being able to pour the foundation and start construction this construction season. The access point is on between Railroad Place, which Steve is showing on his screen, and the building. Right now, there is a traffic barrier and there were trees that were planted, and that's where the staging would happen. We don't anticipate that there'll be we don't anticipate that there's going to be a lot of disruption to the traffic. We would love to be able to help them get in there and get out in the next number of months. While potentially traffic might be a little bit slower. They will have safety barriers up between Railroad Place and the building where they're this building site where they're doing their work. But I think that captures most of what we're looking at here. We do have DPW on the line, and we also have legal on the line as well if there's any questions that pop up.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yep.
I signed one of these agreements for an adopt-a spot at exit 14. It was basically the same language. And everybody that signs up for an adopt-a spot does the same thing. You have temporary access onto city property, and then you have to sign a form, and it's just basically a formality. I think this is very good timing because the train station is quiet for the most part. And this is an amazing improvement to the TOD plan. It's been an integral part of it. It's right next to the train station. And I see this as a no-brainer. I certainly support this, and I think this is a great step forward.
I agree, Mike.
I have a clarifying question. Oh, sorry. I just have a clarifying question. I was just wondering why it's being asked for now. Was it not foreseen that this was needed before?
So it was, I think that there was, to be perfectly honest, there was some turnover in the city. There was also some turnover with the redevelopment agency. So some of the touch points for this particular developer that got transitioned over the last number of months. What we were thinking was that we wanted to bring forward the right of entry and also the permanent easement, but as separate pieces. We wanted to be able to work with the developer to be able to get in the ground as soon as possible. And we were working with timelines, not that they were putting forward, but we were with the timelines to get in for this construction season. So we wanted to support them coming through the city's committees and commissions in the spring. At one point in time, there was discussion that Railroad Place would become a public road, that it would be a right of way, but there are a few, not issues, but a few things that we would need to work through. One of which is the financing of the cost to become a road. The second is the width of the road. The width of the entry from Railroad Place to Monroe is actually being revised and reconfigured on the developers paying for that as part of the zoning commission approvals. And so the other piece of that is that we're not really sure what that whole entire parcel will look like. So we're a little hesitant to push forward a road at this particular point because we don't want to have to construct a road or a public roadway through that larger parcel and then have opportunities that come up down the road that don't configure properly with the road that we put in. So there was discussion about creating a public right-of-way, a road. We did deviate off of that, and as a result, we're coming in now to ask for the temporary right of entry and then the permanent easement at a later date.
And one other question, why was the decision made not to charge them for the temporary easement?
So the decision for the temporary easement was that we would not seek compensation due to the investments that they were making through other parts of the project, like the $300,000 in streetscape improvements, the $250,000 through the building permit, which is an estimate. But in addition, that we would be working with them on a permanent easement, and that the permanent easement would be, we would negotiate the permanent easement, but because of the temporary nature of this particular right of entry, we're looking at it as a license as opposed to an easement. So that was the decision not to seek compensation.
Thank you.
Jessica, I have a couple questions. This is Tammy. I drove around the block 3 times today and was sort of perplexed as to why they need the easement coming in off of Railroad Place. At first I thought we had the address wrong because it said Henry Street and Chestnut Street, but the way you're talking about it, it's the other end of the property really at Monroe Street and Chestnut Street. There's a hill from Railroad Place down into that sort of triangular lot, right? And so I'm looking at the screen that Steve has up. It's that shaded area that looks a little, brownish as opposed to the very black and white map. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So why can't they just come in from Monroe Street? Why do they need to come over the hill into the property?
Right. So I think it's a really great question, Tammy. So I think that the trick of this is that they would come in off of Chestnut and it'll end up doing like 85% of the foundation work, but their property basically abuts city property. And so for them to be able to pour the foundation in that one corner is where they would need to be able to access. And I think Steve's cursor is sort of over in that area, but
they might just park like a big cement mixer with one of those arms and reach in, or are they going to wreck the side? I mean, I was sort of saddened to see that they've cut down every tree basically that used to be along there. It used to be very green, but neither here nor there.
Steve, if you want to show, can I show my screen?
Yeah, 1 second. Brian, can you do that? And I'll stop my share.
Yeah, you should be able to share, Jessica. Let me know if you can't.
Okay, so can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is Railroad Place coming up from Monroe. So Tammy, what you're saying is that all of the trees were cut down, which they were, all the trees that were cut down beside the guardrail. But the building that you see with Sono and South Norwalk is the building that we're talking about, the 110,000 square feet of development with the 106 apartments. So we need to be able to pour the foundation in up to the point where the parking lot is between the building on the left and the building on the right. So to be able to access the corner of their lot, they've requested a right of entry so that they are able to construct that foundation. And we wanted to be able to give them the right of entry one, for safety precautions so that they can construct the foundation, having access to the site. But second of all, if they do need to get any equipment up on Railroad Place, that they would be able to do that. And I think that the question came up, well, what if we were to say, the right of entry isn't possible? Well, to your point, Tammy, I think that they would still be able to construct that corner foundation, but because of safety and because of access, we wanted to be able to request the right of entry so that they have the ability to get into that corner that you saw on the site plan, where basically their property abuts the city property.
Right, but okay, so thank you for putting that other picture up on the screen of the plan. It's not only it looks permanent because they're going to pull into that building, that garage underneath from Railroad Place.
So they will request,
right? Picture back, Steve.
Yep, so they will request a permanent easement.
Well, then why, like, what is this? It feels like a little dance. They don't need to request the easement if we've already approved their plan to access the garage for that building from Railroad Place.
But we have yet.
Or am I missing something?
Yeah, we have yet to do that. So we need to come through. We need to come through and take a permanent easement through the process, and the permanent easement would allow them to access what you're seeing, what you're talking about. But first and we talked about two ways of doing it. One way we talked about doing it was to bring forward the right of entry and the construction access along with the permanent easement, that we would bring them together through the process. The difference with the right of entry versus the permanent easement is that the permanent easement requires an appraisal, and they're going through the appraisal process now for the permanent easement. To be able to support them getting in the ground this construction season, we had discussed with them that we would bring through the right of entry first so that they could access the site and begin the foundation work on the site, taking the risk on themselves. And that while the appraisal was being completed, we would take that right of entry through the process. And once the appraisal was completed, then we would take through the permanent easement. So it's really—
That seems convoluted to me, but maybe that's the way these things happen. I don't know.
It's really—
Well, we got Darren in. We have Darren here. He can probably explain this. Hey, Darren.
Yeah, hey, how are you? I'm happy to answer any questions on it. So the easement aspect is not only the evaluation process, which is a process in of itself and has been commenced, but transactionally the easements have to be thought out and vetted and dealt with in a way that everyone's going to be happy with. And so by bifurcating this small little piece of it to allow them to get construction started, it kind of allows the time to address the other issue. Now they understand, fully apprised, in fact, in assuming this commission approves the right of entry, it'll be a representation within the right of entry agreement that they understand that they're accepting the risk that they may never get the easements that they're looking for. But really, the only thing that's occurring here is it's not an easement. It's just its right. It's more like a license. If it was a public road, it would have been done by an encroachment permit, as a matter of right. And the reality is that they're not allowed to make any improvements on city property. It's simply so that to the extent that they may have equipment that is when they're on that corner of the lot crosses that line, they're not quote unquote trespassing, and God forbid any injuries occur, the city has an indemnification insurance. So it really is taking a very small piece of the puzzle out of it. The nuts and bolts are the easements, which are being dealt with in a separate process. So there actually will be a temporary construction easement that they'll request that will be valued to put the sidewalks in that they're required to do by way of the zoning approval. There'll be they'll be requesting a non-exclusive ingress and egress easement because the road there is actually not a public road, but a driveway. And so we said, it's not a public road. You've got to have an easement over the driveway, in addition to the ramp that you're seeing on the rendering that Jessica provided. There's also contemplated at the opening of, I believe it's Monroe Street, where it turns onto 30 or outlets onto Monroe. There's a widening there, which also contemplates a separate easement that the city would need to acquire over the developer's land to provide a 2-lane exit. So there's multiple aspects of these easements downstream that require quite a bit of thought and deliberation and should not be rushed. And so the way it was presented to me is, this was a way to allow at the developer's risk that they could, commence construction in a safe way, while these other issues would be vetted. The alternative would be that the project gets delayed.
Well,
A question, Darren. You mentioned that there was we had an application earlier about additional parking. On Jessica's picture, the parking area is not on that, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
There was some additional parking that they were looking for in conjunction with the railroad station. Jessica's pictures does not show that area, does it?
Jess probably could speak to that issue. The driveway, at least for this portion of the development, from what I understand, the driveway goes into the second tier of their deck parking lot. So it's a 2-tier parking lot, and the second floor is accessed from 30 Monroe Street, assuming they were granted an easement, and the first floor is accessed from Chestnut Street.
So maybe Steve could answer that question then. Steve,
Yeah.
you know what I'm referring to, Steve? Steve, you there?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so I'll back up just a little bit. The picture you're looking at there, that building in the middle, that
Yep.
lower profile building, that's actually the first phase of a multi-phase development. That's 11 Chestnut.
Yeah, that's already
the
erected
left-
already, though. That's already erected.
Right. And so what happened is the development team has purchased this other parcel, actually I should say parcels, to the left of that where the cursor is now. That's
Yep.
the second phase of this project. South of this area is a larger third phase and potentially other phases as well. And so the parking is shared amongst these different uses. So the middle building there has parking on, as you can see in the rendering, has parking on both sides. There's access to the new larger building from that building there. It's kind of right there. And then
Right.
there's also, that's to a lower deck. So, and then if you're coming up Railroad Place, there's access to the upper parking deck. So they split the parking decks. There's not like an internal circulation. There's a one-way, there's an entrance off of Monroe to get to the lower area and an entrance off of Railroad Place to get to the upper parking deck.
So the question I had was regarding the other application regarding additional parking. That was towards Henry and Chestnut.
Further south, down in the corner.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. This is not to do with the recent application that we had before.
Yeah. So this, what you're looking at tonight is just a temporary construction easement so they could park some equipment and machinery there to make it a little easier for them to construct their building.
But it has
But
nothing
in
to do, it has
in the
nothing to
end,
do
there-
with the.
developer is assuming that they're going to get the permanent easement to make that garage entrance off of Railroad Place, whether it's a street or whether it's just a driveway for the train station. They are assuming that. Or
That's
has the
right.
city
So-
given them permission?
That's right. So originally the city was originally we had explored creating that into a public right of way, a road. And if it was a road, then they would only need an encroachment permit. They wouldn't have to go through the permanent easement and they wouldn't have to go through the permanent easement. Because the land that you see by the train station is a parcel and not a public right of way, then we need to go through the right of entry for them to do the construction. And then we would need to go through the permanent easement for a long-term access point. The property that you were talking about when you were saying you were driving around, that's the property that Steve was talking about as phase 3, which is at the corner of Chestnut and Henry. So I think that's the piece that, that's the parcel that you were referring to earlier.
Yes, but I mean, the one at hand is the one at the top of at Monroe and Chestnut.
That's
that we're
correct.
talking-
Yep.
that you're talking about right now.
That's right.
That's what we're approved today, but the way the memo read, it was Henry and Chestnut, not Chestnut and Monroe.
Okay.
Jessica, I have a question. So I've just been on like a lot of calls lately with investors, with Price Waterhouse, with the Appraisal Institute. I mean, everything to do with, you know, how we're all going to be appraising and what investors are going to be looking for in the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 years. And one of the things that they don't seem to be looking for is density. So like, are any of these guys thinking of like redoing anything, any kind of design, putting more private balconies in, putting more, I mean, this whole concept of like where we were going for seems like a lot of people are like now backing away from it, including all the REIT calls I've been on.
Yeah, so I've been reading as well, and I think that what I've read is that people are not interested in investing in buildings in, when we think about New York density, where there's 7,000 units per building. But the fact is that folks are looking to move out of New York, and Fairfield County is a prime space for them to be looking. So we anticipate that these types of buildings with this level of density that are directly adjacent to the train station will continue to be in high demand. Whereas those buildings that are 7,000 units that are extreme high skyscrapers in New York that are, you know, 200 square feet units or 300 square foot units, I think that that's where the investment is starting to lean away from.
Yeah, see, I from the calls I've been on, it's both. It doesn't, I mean, even Warren Buffett said the other day, if you're not investing in single family homes now, you're going to lose out. So, I mean, I was on a call with one of the biggest REITs the other day that does all the opportunity zones, and the call was not, I mean, it was concerning to me, more as an appraiser than this conversation, but I just thought maybe that they would be kind of looking at this to kind of like re-engineering it a little bit, because they were all focused on buildings that are going to have like very flexible space underneath for more service oriented, people that could do high deliveries, more stuff that you could go out the door on with curbside stuff, more units that had less shared space and more private balconies or private spots. So I didn't know if like this was going to be coming with some of these projects, but you're saying no, they're not revamping, relooking.
No, so we haven't seen that. So of all the developers that we've been working with, we haven't seen that trend hit yet. So we've seen advancement for phase 2 here and phase 3 here. We've seen advancement and excitement for 121, 123